Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today, I am absolutely delighted to bring onto the show Joshua Masia from DealBridge.ai. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me today.
Listen, it's great to have you on, Josh. And this is the second time we've spoken. We were introduced a little while ago, had a really interesting chat. There's a lot to talk about today, all around the world, of something which I think is on the tip of everyone's tongue at the moment, which is generative AI. But also, we're talking about a journey that you've been on as you sit there at the moment in Istanbul, and there's a fascinating journey I think they're about taking the business, on a global journey that you've been on, etc. So we're going to dig into all of that, but also there's a lot to cover. So I'm really excited about this episode. I'm really excited to introduce you to our viewers and find out a little bit more about DealBridge and your story. So let's start there. Tell us a little bit about yourself and DealBridge.
Great. No, thanks again for having me. It's a great platform to be joining. So my name is Josh Masia. I'm the co-founder and CEO of DealBridge. We've been working on this platform for the past 3 years. My experience has been predominantly in the FinTech space, where I've spent the past 15 years building out solutions for a variety of different industries within, whether it's private or public markets. I had my early experiences at some of the largest investment firms, BlackRock and JP Morgan Chase & Co. Was an early joiner of iCapital to build out the fund structured side of private investments. And while I was working on all of that, one of the things that was a recurring thing that one of the recurring themes that I noticed was the fact that we put a lot of effort into the automation of onboarding clients and advisors and ultimately closing and tracking investments. But we never really put a lot of effort in the upfront due diligence of the products that were being hosted on the platform. And all of that was being done very manually. Not to say that people weren't putting time and effort into it, but we never introduced any technology in it. So after 4 years of seeing this over and over again, I connected with a firm called Finitive, two very knowledgeable investment bankers, and spent about 2-3 years learning more about investment banking and specialty finance. And after connecting with my founders, actually ultimately at Finitive, and getting the blessing from their founders, we ultimately decided to build a startup from scratch and say, what were all the lessons learned from alternative investments, from deal flow? What were all the things we were hearing very consistently from all the large and small firms that we were working with on a daily basis? And we ultimately decided to put DealBridge.ai together to build the first ever deal relationship management platform, or as we call it in short, DRM. And a lot of times people will immediately say, what's the difference between deal relationship management and client relationship management? We use Salesforce, we use Insightly, we even use DealCloud. And so one of the big differences was a lot of these platforms are trying to add structure behind the sales process, which is great. As a technologist and engineer who has spent my entire career looking at taking complex problems and building standardized data models and processes that run on top of them, that's a tried and true way of solving a lot of problems. As we've evolved in the data space, we've been able to introduce a lot of different algorithms like generative AI tools, these large language models that have allowed us to kind of take a step back and say to ourselves, yes, it's important to structure the data so that we're able to actually have a consistent lens and report on it and talk to it and summarize it for human consumption. But the most important thing at the end of the day is also accepting the human nature of what is deal flow, and that a lot of deals are unique. A lot of the ways that people want to interact with those deals and the information is unique. The clients that you're potentially trying to pitch and sell to are unique. There's a need for personalization. And so generative AI allows DealBridge AI to introduce this unstructured nature of deal flow and put that at the forefront. and avoid overly structuring the deal up front so that you can actually not only make the best call on your due diligence and understand truly what the deal is and the value that it brings, find the right people that want to potentially participate, if or you yourself can participate in the transaction, and then ultimately finding a way to distribute it if you're looking for co-investors and not just doing a direct deal yourself, or using your syndication partners. So we've really found that taking a step back and saying, it's great that we want to structure data. And at the end of the day, all businesses need to structure their data to scale their processes, et cetera. But we wanted to go a more natural route day one and say, put in your unstructured data and then put a very smart assistant on top of it that helps you kind of more add a human edge to that conversation between you and the data that you're working with.
I think that's so important, isn't it? And I'm pleased you mentioned the sort of human edge, because I think, when you immediately think about people playing with AI, it's about replacement, isn't it? And I think, I've said this all the way through, that this is about augmentation,
Exactly.
and making human processes more efficient and quicker and better. And every time I do this show, I'm looking at the companies who we're talking to, and it's variations of user experience and removing friction. It's variations of efficiency and productivity, and it's variations of cost reduction and removal in some instances. And I think technology, to me, should always be something there which is about how do we make our jobs, humans' jobs, much more productive. And I think that's where this sort of media-driven fear of technology and AI and disruption and us against the machines and the Terminator sort of vernacular that comes through all of this is actually about doing exactly what you say there, which is just augmenting the human process. And I think if you can put man and machine together, that to me is where we've got this opportunity to be so much better and to utilize tools like yours that see pain points in the industry and make them better from it. I want to come on to that again in a minute, but I just want to sort of rewind a little bit to you and your founder starting this up. You were originally from, or you were based over in the States, and working out in New York. I know at various different stages in other parts of the coast as well. Talk to me about the journey and how it's set and where you're based and where you're and who you're servicing at the moment.
Yeah, so I'm currently sitting, as you mentioned, in Istanbul, Turkey, or as they now call it, Turkey. It's I feel like when most people hear of the country, they think of the bird, not the place. But
It's coming up to Thanksgiving, right?
Exactly. Happy Thanksgiving. So I made a lot of great connections and built a great mentor network out in New York. My co-founders sit in San Francisco, California. The three of us connected when we were working at FinTech, building out investment banking and specialty finance technology, servicing the private credit, and on the specialty finance side, the litigation finance side as well. We got talking. We saw the world of alternative investments very similarly. We had spent a lot of time talking with customers and understanding some of the pain points they had, and even from FinTech's founders. And we're ultimately able to get to a point where we believe all the lessons that we learned from our previous experiences in financial technology at FinTech, it was time for us to take that next step and bring out a new company to actually deliver the first ever deal relationship management platform, where every aspect of our platform is about automation and using generative AI and other types of algorithms to automate very unstructured processes within the private market space. As a result of that, we also found a lot of adjacency to legal tech. What a lot of people are not familiar with, there's a huge amount of documents that go behind all transactions, whether it's your non-disclosure agreements, your term sheets, your official closing documents. And these things take weeks, if not months, to close a deal. And a lot of that time is spent running due diligence and structuring the data, trying to get people documents through data rooms, having back and forth conversations via email, via phone call, et cetera. So we're talking about a lot of unstructured data. So our idea was simple: take all that unstructured data, upload it into a data room, put it, structure that data in an effective manner, and throw a generative AI engine on top of it so that people could start having more conversations with the data that they're ingesting. So, we've gotten to a point where anyone can pretty much put together a data room. We've gotten to a point where, there's a lot of platforms out there that will help you manage your client relationship management. What we haven't had to date was the ability to automate the creation of investor committee memos from all this disparate information that's scattered in hundreds or thousands of documents. We haven't had technology that allows you to ask a question and say, where is this piece of information? Even if you don't want to trust the generative AI engine to give you a perfect answer back, which, and we can talk about, there's a lot of gaps in generative AI and room for improvement. Like any other technology, it's a tool. It needs to be applied in a particular use case. But this is the first of its kind where you can ask and have a natural conversation with a data set. It's not always about getting a perfect response back. It's also about narrowing in to a specific document that has the information you're looking for. So yes, there are times where you can ask questions of that data set and get a perfect response back. But there are going to be times where you may want to validate that. And a lot of these engines will allow you, and what we've built is a way to cross-check your information against your underlying documents. We've built ways to build profiles of both your sales team and the clients that you're ultimately trying to sell your technology to. By building these profiles, you build in personalization in your sales process. So once you learn about the types of transactions that people are interested in, once you learn about how a salesperson pitches something to a client, whether it's a specific client or their clients in general, we're able to run automated processes where not only do we recommend which people within your syndication network you should ultimately market that transaction, that deal to for investment, but also add a personalized email and outreach from that salesperson. So at no point in time does the salesperson have to write an email. At no point in time do they have to really think to themselves, who are the best people to connect with and market this deal to? It also opens up new ways of thinking about a combinatory structuring of a particular transaction. So co-investments are a very common way for people to mitigate their risk, where one or two or three institutional investors will come together and ultimately take, maybe that $50 million transaction and cut it up three different ways. This is the first ever of its kind where we can also help you identify what are the maximums of investment that most of these companies are looking to mitigate their risk, and ultimately also recommend, a co-investment, a grouping of people to make that investment as well. So every aspect of what we're building right now is using algorithms, specifically on the generative AI front, to take what was a highly curated process of running a deal ultimately into something that you can click a single button, and from identifying the deal to identifying who you want to sell to automatically sending out outreach is all done with the click of a button, or could be just left to its own devices to run in the background. So, there's a lot of things that we're trying to do to perfect this. And we're, I would say we're definitely early in our life cycle of building. We're constantly developing new ways to perfect this process. But it's we've gotten a lot of great feedback from the community so far. We're about to announce a bunch of partnerships in the upcoming weeks. We're right now currently fundraising, and we hope to announce a round in the upcoming weeks. And on top of that, we've even been asked by Thomson and Reuters at an upcoming generative AI conference to talk on the topic of how generative AI can be used in legal tech and fintech. I'm really excited about what
Can
we're
imagine. I mean,
building at
that's a
DealBridge.
pretty cool set of things on the agenda, the tick list, isn't it, for the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, it keeps you, life keeps you busy, but that's the way I like it.
How are you finding the raise aspect? Because I think it's an interesting climate at the moment for it. And my view is that there are people who I'm speaking to who are struggling to to get that money at the moment, and there's people in there who are doing it. And I think it's there's a lot to be learned from the ones who are, from the lessons from each side of it in terms of how, what, and where. And I think it's very important. I think, in my opinion, to get the right sort of partner from where that money comes from, or the right sort of investors from where that money comes from, the right sort of agreement on terms of when they're expecting that to return and why. But I think one of the things I always go back to is that good companies are always able to raise money, and particularly if they've got the right sort of team and the right sort of tech and the right sort of process, and they're solving the right problem. To me, it seems like it's the right problem. We know that AI at the moment is an area where people are looking to invest. I think it's one of the more investable areas at the moment. There's a lot of people wanting to bet into that in a similar sort of way that they've gone into early into other areas in the past. What's the climate like from what you're seeing at the moment?
I think in general, when I talk to other founders, this is one of the hardest markets to raise capital in a long time. I think everyone was getting used to the mega valuations and the ease of cash that was available at cheap, because cash at some point, various aspects of how easy it was to borrow money. A lot of companies were, it was advantageous for them to spend that money. We're definitely entering a time where it's harder to fundraise, but I think that is also good in a sense because it gives you the opportunity to find the right partner. A lot of times, people are focused on what a lot of people think when they're fundraising is about the money that they're having in their bank account. That's never been our priority at DealBridge.ai. Our priority has always been partnerships. In fact, even when we're going and seeking clients, and one of the interesting things about what it means to find clients at DealBridge.ai is all of the companies that could be funding DealBridge.ai from a venture capital perspective can actually also be clients of the platform itself. So it's one of the unique tools, and it's easy to pitch in a sense because of just the nature of the business that we're in. But more importantly than the money is the relationships and the doors that a lot of these firms open up, and the lessons that we can learn from seeing new views on how we should think about our product. And that comes from whether the VCs or the private equity firms that are helping us fundraise, or even our clients themselves. We're trying to build an ecosystem that's all about collaboration. And in order to do that, our main culture is to collaborate and to build things that bring forward that collaborative spirit. So we follow that even in our fundraising activities as well. So I'm actually excited where things are at. Like a lot of people look at a hard market and they just get, frustrated. I look at it and say, there's actually better opportunities, and
100%.
we want to partner with the best investors, and the best investors are going to be the ones making investments in the hardest market. So I'm very happy where we're at. I'm really excited to see what we're doing, and I hope to be announcing something in the upcoming weeks.
I'm looking forward to that. My eyes are going to be peeled, and I've got no doubt that you're going to be in the right sort of spot. And I absolutely agree with you. Look, I think I'm a big believer in negatives into positives and looking for opportunities when things are tougher. And every single stage of in my 25 years in this industry, I've seen exactly the same sort of thing mirrored with companies in there who thrived by taking opportunity and playing offense rather than defense in these sort of periods. And it's really encouraging for me to hear what you're talking about within that. I want to go into something we were talking about off camera beforehand, and the sort of similarities I think of where AI is at the moment compared to the sort of the advance of cloud 10, 15 years ago or so. So cloud to me was an area there which had certain elements of no-brainer to it right from a very early stage when I first started seeing about it and working with it. But I think within financial services in particular, there was a longer pathway to get its adoption. And I've said a couple of times on this show that the real catalyst, I think, for its final assault was actually a pandemic, where cloud became inevitable, and we saw then companies sort of expand at rates we hadn't seen before in financial services between 21 and 22, based off the adoption of cloud-based technology within that. But it took, realistically, well over a decade for it to come through. You look at AI, and I think there are obvious benefits just through the efficiencies of what you've been speaking about, and the opportunities are huge. And when you were talking there about the sort of sales processes and the emails and everything, you can look at it with it. There are use cases immediately that can get you really, really excited about what they're doing. The concern I've heard in financial services about this is in financial services you can't be approximately right, and so the trust element and the confidence element of AI is a very easy box for tech-phobic leaders within financial services to sort of shun their nose up and say, we can't deal with that. It's a great thing, but it's just too close as opposed to perfect for us and things. So I can see again a real potential for the industry to shoot itself in the foot, whilst you're seeing other areas really advance rapidly, other industries advance rapidly through embracing AI. Where in financial services, where you've obviously got to be a little bit more tight around risk, et cetera, I think there'll be things there where it's going to take longer for it to be fully adopted, unless we can get those processes in play to make people understand it quicker, and to build that confidence and build that trust and build that understanding in people. So when you're sat there as a business that is as forward thinking as you are in and around generative AI, and you can see, very clearly and very passionately, and alongside your founders, I'm sure, the benefits to this of people embracing this, this technology and what it can do for them. How do you see the progress, and how do we deal with that confidence, and how do we move people forward in the space?
So I think one of the best experiences I had, kind of coming up the ranks in financial services, and I think this holds true whether we're talking about any traditionalist institutions, whether we're talking about law firms, whether they're talking about financial institutions, to your point, there are always going to be laggards in the adoption of new technology. And I actually look at this as a positive thing. They want to move on things that are proven. And, I spent a few years building out, at JP Morgan Chase & Co., the technology and operational risk organization that focused on data analytics, and became very familiar with how internal banks think about technology and operational risk. And that was a really great lens to have before I jumped into the traditional startup world of FinTech, because it really helped me get a lens on what they value and how to talk to these firms and get them comfortable. And the most important thing is who holds the data and where is the information being hosted. Why are a lot of companies blocking OpenAI and people from using ChatGPT? Because they're concerned that they're going to be passing, things like social security numbers and other secure information into prompts that would then be stored on OpenAI's servers. So one of the things that we did when we started DealBridge.ai was, yes, it's great that we're using generative AI, but more importantly was, how do we tell the story of where the data and the services are being hosted? And even though we're a SaaS company, we're a cloud-based company, all aspects of your information is hosted in your white label, where we wanted to make sure that you had full control over your branding and personalization of your experience, that everything was an extension of who you were as a company. Not that you were conforming to DealBridge and our technology, but our technology was conforming to your processes. So like anything else, it's important to be SOC compliant. It's important to make sure that you can have those deep conversations with companies to explain where the data is being stored, how it's being structured, where are the algorithms sitting, et cetera. And I think we've done a really great job with making people comfortable with that and making it very clear that their information wasn't just going to be floating around to be, picked up by the open AIs of the world, the Azures, the GCPs, and the Amazon web service providers. Still to this day, if you're using a lot of the services provided by some of these companies, and I don't want to speak generally, but I could think of even a general use case when I was many years ago looking at AWS for document classification and extraction. They were leveraging the documents to further their models, right? We don't want to say, oh yeah, all your information can be further used to make our platform better. No, what companies are comfortable with is your data is your data.
Yeah.
Period. No, there's nothing else there. There's no italics. There's no fine print. It's your data is your data. End of sentence. So that's really important, and being able to be comfortable with having those upfront technology and operational risk conversations. Just the fact that I've gotten a chance to see both the large and small institutions and everything in between, and I've been very lucky in that sense. I've had a very lucky career in that sense, and had a lot of amazing mentors.
I always think that when people talk about lucky careers, that there's usually something about the person who's been driving that luck. So very humble of you, but I think if you look at it, you're absolutely right. It's a stellar your background. I think, and we said this beforehand, right? I think you've got the perfect background for a founder in this space. From institutional names and logos to see that side of it, as you're alluding to there. To then going into the product piece, which I keep seeing as a fantastic background for people to come in as a finders, because I think it makes you a founder. I think it makes you think like a customer, and then I think if you're thinking like a customer, you can create a product that is very successful based off the back of that. So I think it's been look, as you say, mentors coming away, but sometimes it's about finding those mentors and putting yourself in a situation for them to take interest for you. So I think it's phenomenal what you've been doing, and I think luck comes from people who generally put themselves into it and follow a passion and think creatively and differently. So it's exciting to see what you're doing within it. And I think what you were saying there about it made me think actually about the evolution of this concept of cloud and AI and adoption and everything in between it, and risk and the industry. I think the difference between the industry now and the industry 15 years ago when cloud came out compared to where we're seeing AI is I think we're dealing with a much more technical boardroom. I think in boardrooms now, when I started 23 years ago, there might have been IT directors, but CTO was a relatively new position, and it certainly didn't. I think it sort of carried the status of a cost as opposed to a real, generative position in the boardroom of weight and significance. And now I think there are boardrooms where you've got CPOs, you've got CTOs, you've got CIOs, you've got chief data officers, and we're talking about a much more tech savvy board who are sat there. Even the consumer, even if you look at the less tech orientated CEOs on financial boards, you're looking for advantage and you're looking for productivity and you're looking in an area where everything's more expensive, margins are ever more raised, and tech can be the answer to that. So it becomes cost producing as much as cost reducing. So I think we will see a more rapid adoption of AI because people are able to explain it better, but people are also able to receive that information better and understand it and be more tech savvy in the way that they're able to manage that risk and take that risk on. So I think it's a really, really interesting thought process that we're in at the moment. Josh, I mentioned at the start this is going to go with the click of a finger, and when you're dealing with interesting subjects and interesting people, and it has done. But I really want to finish with the company. You've mentioned DealBridge, and you've mentioned some exciting stuff coming through from raises through to what you guys are doing, and constant development of the business and clients, etc., etc. But tell me a little bit about what's exciting. This will be out towards the end of the year now. And I want to look forward to 2024, and I want to hear what we can expect to see from DealBridge. And then I want you to tell me how people can get in touch, who should be getting in touch, and what's the best way for them to reach you.
So from a 2024 perspective, one of the things that we've been heavily putting a lot of time in is generative AI and putting that at the forefront of everything we do at DealBridge.ai. As a result of that, we're looking to release into production in the upcoming weeks our Deal Insight personal assistant. It's been in beta. We have people starting to test it, but we're looking to make it a part of our core offering. We've got a lot of early great feedback from early adopters of our partners, and we hope to continue to make that system a part of every aspect of our trade lifecycle, everything from onboarding new clients, distributing those transactions, running due diligence, building documents automatically. So the exciting part for us is to continue to evolve our knowledge in the generative AI and artificial intelligence space in general, continue to grow our partnerships. We know we can be the next name like Salesforce in this new space that we're creating, the deal relationship management space. And we think a lot of people will start asking themselves, do I actually need a CRM anymore? Now, we're a big believer that if you want to use your existing CRM and just add a DRM on top of it, great. But for people that, as we perfect and continue to grow our capabilities of our tooling, I think we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to ask ourselves, do we even need the CRM anymore, and go full on into the DRM space? That's one of the beautiful things about commoditization of technology, and perfectly said in how the boardroom has become more and more technical. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's become a lot easier to adopt data intensive processes and automate them. We were not able to do these things even looking back a few years. Now, like anything else, there's going to be a lot of concerns that we're going to have to battle through as a first adopter in this space. As we mentioned, the information security, operational and technology risks, and getting people used to using these tools, just as in the past with cloud adoption. But we believe that this is the future, and we know we'll be able to achieve our goals as we head into 2024. For those that are interested in connecting with us, please go to DealBridge.ai. We also are very active on LinkedIn and provide weekly insights on what the business is doing, market trends that we are seeing, et cetera. And we also have, if you're interested, for those that want to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, where we talk about everything from client relationship management, the introduction of deal relationship management, market trends, upcoming feature releases within the product, and the partnerships that we're facilitating through our platform.
Going back to what you were talking about earlier on with regards to Istanbul, you mentioned the co-founders on the other side. I know you've moved over to Istanbul. There's a lot of opportunities within that. I know it's been sort of a personal move that went through there, and I love the fact that the last 3-4 years have allowed us to have a much more international business, and people can be based anywhere and build and scale fantastic businesses from it. But talk to us a little bit about why Istanbul and what that means for you and the opportunities that creates for DealBridge as well.
Yeah, so I think one of the amazing parts is being able to sit at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. It really opens us up day one to be an international company. As you mentioned, my other founders sit in San Francisco. I go back and forth quite a bit in New York, where I was born and raised, and my family sits. I've been lucky enough to meet an amazing partner while I was in New York, who's a diplomat, and as a result, we got assigned by the UN to be based in Istanbul, Turkey. So I made it out here, and it's an amazing culture, and it's a great place to start a startup. So with, as you mentioned, the pandemic and being able to be remote, we're able to have conversations with anyone, no matter where they sit. So in fact, we've gotten great feedback from companies as a result of pretty much being able to operate 24/7 as a result of our strategic sitting between San Francisco and Istanbul. There isn't a time zone that we can't hit. So I think it's a great opportunity and a great place to be. And, I still am very active in the New York community and go back constantly, but really loving the opportunity to explore a new culture and a language and do something different after 15 years pretty much in New York nonstop. But thank you very much for your time today, and the opportunity to talk about all the really fun things that we're working on at DealBridge AI.
Josh, it's an absolute pleasure, and I say that because one of the great things about having done this for the last 3 years ago or so has been the amount of really interesting people I've met, and I love hearing people talk about their take on the opportunities in the marketplace. And I just think I'm constantly blown away just by how people think and how people see these sort of things and recognize there's an opportunity to do things better. And I speak to a lot of people on the show every single week, and we're putting new people out, and there's some brilliant people. But what I love about what you're doing with DealBridge is, and the team is it's just um, so focused on an area there, which I think just makes it really obvious. It makes it really obvious to buy. It makes it really obvious to improve a situation. I love that sort of man and machine piece that we were talking about earlier on and how it can go with it. So and I love that piece that you said at the end there when you corrected yourself from think to know about where it goes, and that sort of that sort of certainty that you're doing the right thing is, I think, is an amazingly impressive piece. And I wish you the very best of luck with everything you've got planned for the year ahead. And particularly this raise, I think it's great to do. I know you're confident about where you sit in the whole process with it, and that's testament to, I think, the idea, to the market, to everything you're doing in there. And if companies are raising at the moment, I think the success rate is going to be monstrously better than it has been at various other stages when people are taking funding at Series A, seed, etc., etc. I think this is a time where we're going to see some real success stories coming through from it. So. It has been an absolute pleasure. Josh, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.